Hello comrades, this is a very beginner-friendly course of C# programming in Unity. So if you feel that everything else is very difficult, I will try to make it as easy for you as possible. I expect you to know how to actually install Unity and create a project, but from now, just right-click in your project, create C# script, and let's call it character. So this is your first script, and double click on it to open. It will open in Visual Studio, which comes pre-installed with Unity. At least you can select it to be pre-installed. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see the next episodes of these basic tutorials. And I'm trying to aim for artists and technical artists and anybody who don't really know how to code, or game designers. So if you feel that it's too difficult for you, just ask. I can explain everything in even more detail. So this is how our script looks like. I would suggest you to ignore everything here for now, because we'll go through it later. Right now, it's just a general overview. So we have our class, character, that we just created, and it's a mono behavior. This is how you say that it's a mono behavior. Mono behavior is a Unity component, so everything you can put on game object is a mono behavior. It's a component. Then every class in Unity, every component in Unity has start and update. Start is called once you press play, more or less, but only after awake functions that you don't see here. And update is called every frame. The games are running frame by frame, so you have like 60 frames per second. So it'll per second call the update 60 times, for example, depending on your frame rate. That's not that important right now, but it's a good to know thing. So first thing, we want to set up our character, and characters have some characteristics. So let's say characters have damage. And how do we do that? So let's say we want to store damage. We have to create something that can store it. This is a variable or field, whatever. You can call it in a different way because different languages prefer to call it different. Let's call it variable for now. That's the most simple way to explain it, I would say. So to create a variable, we have to declare its type. Type is integer. And the name, damage. This is how you do it. First, you write type of the variables that you want to create. There are different types. One of them is integer, another of them is string. Then you can have vector3, which stores basically 3 floats. Float is another type. And by default, it's equal to 0. So somewhere on your machine, on your hard drive, it creates a cell which stores integer, and you can access it by saying damage. So you say damage, and it knows that it's there. And the value there is 0. But we can change it, so we can define that it's equal to 3. So our character has damage 3. What else does character has? He has hit points. So int HP equals 100. So he has 100 hit points. At the end of the declaration, you have to put semicolon. If you don't do that, compiler don't know that you finished the line. So it thinks that this is more or less the whole string, and it has no idea what it means. So you have to separate it for compiler into 2 different lines. You don't actually have to do different lines, but you have to separate it with the semicolon. But you want to do 2 different lines because it's impossible to read if you write everything into 1 line. Well, what else does it have? It has armor. So int armor equals 5. Whatever armor does, I mean, it blocks damage somehow or changes damage that you receive. our value is 5. What else does character has? It has a name, string name of our character equals Mario. So you can see that here we have a bit different way of writing things. So int was for integers. For any kind of text, we use string. String is where you hold text. It's again creates somewhere a cell where you store on your hard drive under the name of our character the text Mario. You need this in order to say that it's text. So if you write it without parentheses, then Mario, it will think that it's some kind of other variable and it will search for it and it won't find it. So what you want to do, you want to put your hard-coded text into parentheses. Sorry, not parentheses, quotation marks. Yep, and you have to end it with semicolon. Well, what else can our character have? So let's say our character has speed. So float speed equals to 2.3f. That means that our character has speed of 2.3. Float is a floating point number type. So first we have type, then we have name, then we can assign something to it. We don't have to assign something, then it will take default value. For each type it's different, but usually for numbers it's 0. For text it's null. Null is a type, which means basically nothing is there. So float speed 2.3. To define that it's floating point number, you have to put f after the number. You can see that our speed is 2.3. It's stored somewhere on hard drive under the name speed, and it's float. Okay, I think it's enough characteristics for our character for now. So let's see what we can do with it. We can, for example, subtract damage from HP. So HP minus damage. You can see that it does nothing because technically it does it, but then it doesn't store it anywhere. So you did 100 minus 3 and it's lost because you don't do anything with it. What you can do, you can say that HP equals to HP minus damage. So this variable, HP, will be equal to its current value, 100, minus 3, which is damage. That means that after we execute this, here, if we print, this is how we print to console. We write debug log and HP. This will be 97. So here, HP equals 100. Here, HP equals 97. Once we executed it, next strings will have new value. What you can also do, you can say that you want to assign it to the new variable, int new HP. And new HP, so here HP is 100, here HP will also be 100, because you didn't save it to HP, you saved it to new HP. But Ctrl C, Ctrl E, new HP will be equal to 97. Okay, so we had our integer damage that's stored somewhere on our hard drive and the value is 3. Same for HP, which is stored somewhere and the value is 100. We can access it by basically writing its name. And what we did, we created a new variable, new HP. and we assigned it HP, so our 100 minus damage. At this point, HP is 100, and for the next things, HP is also 100. Because we didn't change HP, we stored the difference in new HP. Okay, I hope it's clear. If not, please ask in the comments. I can probably give you a better example, but that's a pretty simple one. So new HP. If we want to do this operation again, so I copy this. Let's copy everything actually. It won't like it because new HP is already defined in the scope. So what is scope? If you write something under the class, it will be available in both start and update and everywhere else. If you write something inside start, then it will be available only inside start. By writing something, I mean declaring the new variable. So this HP works here, so everywhere. This new HP works only here, because if you write here debug log new HP, you can see it doesn't give me any hints. It doesn't know that it exists. So the name new HP doesn't exist in current context, because here you have access only to things that are inside the class, but not inside some other functions. This is the scope. So the deeper you go into basically brackets, the more scope you have, the deeper the scope level. So this is, let's say, level 1, this is level 2. And this is also level 2, but in a different function. And level 1 is accessible everywhere. This function is at level 2, this function is at level 2, and level 2 is not accessible in all the functions. So here the issue is we already defined it, and we can only rewrite it. We don't need to define it again. So we just remove this declaration, and we can see that it will write this result to new HP again, to the same one, exactly the same one. But we can see that we still do HP minus damage. HP is equal to 100. Damage is still equal to 3. We didn't change it here. So here again, new HP will be equal to 97. And here, new HP will be equal to 97. Because we do the same action. It's like new HP equals 100 minus 3. And again here, 100 minus 3. Exactly the same thing. All right. So this is the basics of the variables. Let's see the functions. So void and start are examples of functions. As you can see, it also starts with the type, which is void. Void is the type specific for functions, because the type that we write for functions is a return type. So basically when you call some function, it can return some value. So after it's done with all the executing, you write return, and let's say return new HP, and it will return 97. So whatever called this function will get a value out of it, and it can store it. Let's write some function. So void print value. The syntax for a function is return type, the name, then parameters. Right now you can see that parameters are empty, so nothing is there. But let's pass an integer there. So we have integer value. So our function will not return anything. We call it print value, and we expect the the function which calls this function to pass some value. Then we do debug.log and we print this value. So I remove this print. This is how you print, just so you remember. And let's call print value from here. This is how you do it. So basically, this part you can copy, paste. Here you do semicolon, here you don't, because this is the whole function. It kind of continues and it's not really a separate block. It won't like this, for example. You can see it breaks everything. So when you call a function, you don't have to specify the type that you're passing. So we remove this and we need to pass some value. And we know that it's type integer because we defined it here. So let's pass it HP. And let's try to call it also for new HP. So what it has to do, first we calculated new HP by basically subtracting 3 from 100. Then we did exactly the same thing, basically getting the same result and saving it again into new HP, which doesn't make sense, but I'm just showing you how it works. Then we just want to print HP and we want to print new HP. So we'll print our 100 and we'll print 97. So I saved it. Let's go back to our Unity and actually run our thing. So pick some game object, let's say main camera in your scene, and drag a character script that we created. You can see that it's here. And switch to console so you can see the messages and press play. You can see that it prints 100 and it prints 97. You can see from which strings it prints it. So one is from character 18, one is from character 19. And 18, 19. That's a number of a string. The call was at string 27. I mean, not the call, but the print itself was a string 24. Yeah, it's not 27, it's 24. You can see it here. And the call for the function was at 18 and 19. That's how you can figure out what printed something exactly. So which string you should look at. And we printed 100 and then 97. Exactly what we passed. What we can change here is the calculations. Let's say we remove this and we create a new function, but this time it will return us some value. So our function will be add, and we will add two ints, int A and int B, that will pass to our function. What it complains about is that you have to return something. So we'll return A plus B. This is how simple this function is. So we can combine our call and do print value. So we'll print the value of add when we pass 103 there. So it looks tricky, but it's not. What you do here, you call one function, add. So the parameter one will be called first. Once you call it, it goes here. We passed 103, so A will be 100, B will be 3. Then it will say, okay, do A plus B and return. So once it returns something, it will return 100 plus 3, 103. So this will be basically exchanged with 103. Okay, let's move it back. And once it was exchanged with 103, we will call print value and pass 103 here. So it will print 103. Okay, let's see how it actually works. So I clear and I start. And you can see that it printed 103. All right, so we learned how to declare something like a variable. So you can store some data like damage, HP, armor, speed, name of the character, anything. We can create a function. The function that doesn't return anything, or the function that returns something. And we pass some data into this function. So we can pass hard-coded data, or we can pass basically our variables. And we get the data that we returned, and we pass it as a parameter to our other function. Or what we could do is do int result equals add HP and 3. So you can see that string ends, and we don't forget to write a semicolon. That's very important. The program won't run without them. And then we pass the result. So once this is done, this will be 103 result, and you print the value 103. So basically returning the value is the same as writing a number which you calculate here. Here you can also do int result equals a plus b and return result. It's exactly the same. And you see we have two things that are called result. And you know how it doesn't confuse itself? Like which one you're trying to use? It's by the scope. As we said, here everything accessible everywhere here. But whatever you declare inside add will be only accessible inside add. Whatever is inside start, new variable, any new variable, then it will be only accessible inside start. And when you press on this result, you can see that it highlights the same one. And here it also highlights the same one. It has like no reference between them. So this is stored separately somewhere on hard drive, and this is stored separately somewhere on hard drive, and computer knows that it's different. So I think that's enough for this lesson. This is very basic stuff. Next time we will go a bit deeper, but with the same amount of detail and same amount of examples. If you want more examples or more explanations, or you have any questions, please ask in comments. I will answer them. If you need more examples, I will do that. And see you in the next lesson. Goodbye.